Welcome to Unit Design 101, where we break down the overall factors that make units useful in Fire Emblem and beyond. Whether you're a ROM hack creator or merely interested in overall design, this resource is for you. This week, we're taking a look at Thieves, the oddball combat utility unit who has steadily lost utility and gained combat prowess over time, and how to find their niche. The Thief class has existed in some form or another in every Fire Emblem game except for Gaiden and SOV, but their specifics have changed with every appearance. Stat-wise, most Thieves feature very high speed and skill, with middling to low stats in most other areas. They avoid and evade more than taking hits, and while they can land hits themselves, they won't generally be doing much damage. One interesting way this relative weakness to other combat units has been explored was in the very first Fire Emblem game, where both Thieves had a 0% growth in the weapon level stat. This meant that, even with the only weapon manual in the game, Thieves were never able to wield Levin swords or Silver swords, meaning that even in a game with global 20 caps, Thieves were always going to be limited in their combat strength. The unique factor of Thieves that differentiates them from every other unit is their utility. In most games, Thieves have the ability to open doors and chests that other units can't. This may require a lockpick item, or maybe a passive ability like Lock Touch. In some games, certain bridges can also be opened by Thieves as well. This encourages deploying Thieves in maps with many locked items. Key items can be used instead to supplement or replace this form of utility, in case the player doesn't have a Thief, chooses not to deploy them, or sends them a different way and doesn't want to wait for them. Key items may not always be available though, or may be very limited in uses, requiring players to either use a Thief, or choose not to open some doors or collect some treasures. Some games allow Thieves to steal items, often only if they are faster than their target. Some games restrict this thievery to only non-weapon items, while others allow taking weapons from enemies, though often with restrictions based on weapon weight, equipped status, or other restrictions. Stealing items is usually an irreplaceable aspect of utility for Thieves, so consideration must be made to make these stealable items both useful enough to encourage a Thief deployment, but not mandatory in case a player loses or does not train or deploy a Thief. Common high-value stealables include stat boosters, promotion items, gems, or healing items. An often overlooked aspect of Thief utility is their extra vision range in Fog of War maps. Being able to see multiple tiles farther into Fog of War than other units gives Thieves exponentially more tiles that they can see at once compared to other units. This can often be combined with a torch item to extend that vision range even farther. In games with particularly restrictive Fog of War, like Engage, gaining such a massive vision advantage translates to far better movement flexibility, and cuts down on the restrictive or surprising elements that Fog of War can introduce. Again though, this is not irreplaceable utility, as players can always play Fog of War maps just with any unit, but it does assist your army overall in a unique way that would otherwise require special items, assuming that they were available at all. Thieves can also provide game-specific utility. Fire Emblem 4's unit-specific money system was augmented by Thieves, who stole money that their target was holding if they hit, and could then give that money out to any other unit. While again, not mandatory, good use of a Thief allowed a player to gear out other characters faster and more effectively than they otherwise could, especially when expensive items like rings were involved. Some games allowed Thieves to promote, giving them access to the Silencer, Lethality, or Bane skills. This gave them an odd form of combat utility, letting them randomly kill, or severely weaken in Bane's case, some units that they fight, regardless of stats. So even if their general combat was poor, they could still occasionally be used to take out a particularly dangerous foe, assuming the player was lucky enough. This gets ruined when higher priority targets are made immune to these effects, but I may talk about this later if I ever cover forcing developer intent over top of player ingenuity. But this does lead us into the world of modern Fire Emblem, where Thief non-combat utility is being steadily removed and replaced with experimental forms of combat utility. Whereas GBA and earlier Thieves used swords, making them often just weaker Myrmidons, the knife and dagger type weapons were introduced in Path of Radiance, and while they were frankly terrible there, Radiant Dawn made knives 1-2 range, with daggers being 1 range with higher damage and often high crit. Still nothing special compared to Fates, whose knives and shurikens were 1-2 range without universal restrictions like javelins or hand axes in that game, while also providing debuffs to the target's stats. Ninjas, the de facto Thief replacement for Hoshido, became incredibly threatening and annoying units, designed in theory to weaken enemies and set up kills for others, especially with skills like Poison Strike, but in practice just being strong and fast enough to kill on their own. Outlaws, Nor's Thief replacement, instead merged the Thief's speed and lock-touch utility with the Archer class, providing a particular combat specialty niche against flyers and, thanks to the weapon triangle, ninjas, whilst keeping the fast, skillful, lockpicking utility players have come to know. The advancement of knives did skip 3 houses, which focused instead on thief mobility by giving that class line the stealth, pass, lethality, and ability to ignore terrain penalties skills. Decent, but without truly helpful utility, the class got overshadowed by other classes that did the mobility or combat better. Engage is currently the most recent game in the series, and it removed all lock-touch utility from the game, leaving Thieves with only their greater fog of war vision. The covert unit type included Thieves and Archers, and doubled evasion bonuses from terrain. Daggers in Engage inflicted poison, a stacking debuff that caused all future attacks against the target to deal bonus damage. This made the role of Thieves evasive chip damage units who set up kills on stronger opponents for other units. A far cry from their previous iterations, sure, but without non-combat utility, there are only so many ways you can create a unique role for such a unit. Thieves truly rely on their utility to stand out. While some games have attempted to carve out a new niche for Thieves that directly involves combat, having a unit whose core design is to set up kills for others will almost always backfire, either because the experience system of Fire Emblem will cause that unit to fall farther and farther behind the level curve, or because making them strong enough to not care about falling behind will end up making them just take the kills themselves, creating just another death machine unit, only this time dodgy instead of bulky. Non-combat utility is only as good as the map design lets it be, though. If the maps have multiple side objectives that are high value, then players will naturally want to deploy Thieves to obtain them, although the amount of awareness that players need to find and keep track of things like stealable stat boosters is a skill the designers will likely need to train into the player. If maps have few valuable side objectives, or if they can all be obtained without Thieves, either by unit capture or buyable keys or the like, then many players will see Thieves as wasted deployment slots, and choose instead to use a stronger combat unit, or a unit whose utility matches their needs more. Ultimately, if you can't design maps with enough opportunities for a utility unit like a Thief, then instead, making a different flavor of combat unit is still a viable option, though they are then competing more directly with other units and lose much of what makes a dedicated utility unit interesting to deploy. Thank you for watching Unit Design 101. A big shout out to Royal Leguzguard member Sal Mellon, and Leguzguard members C2 Peekly, Enigmatic Mr. L, The Big Herman 007, Bro Duderman, Kumi, Miss Mesmerism, Lakag, and Relaz6. You can support the channel and join them for less than $1 a month. If you want to discuss more Fire Emblem units with the community, a link to my Discord is in the description. And until next time, this is Mithril Zenith, signing out.